Hi kids, this week's half-assed tutorial is going to be all about that bass. Inspired by my foray into classical music last week, I did a bit of digging around to see what I could do to improve my bass lines, and there are certain features on the tracks which make better bass lines a breeze. Bass lines created by humans are more appealing and more interesting than bass lines generated by machines for two reasons. Number one, humans make mistakes and machines don't. And number two, humans are lazy, or at least I'm lazy as a bass player. Knowing this, we can use the probability function on the tracks to make a bass line that sounds just that little bit more human and realistic. This is one of the ways that we can make your bass lines a little bit more interesting to listen to, not quite so repetitious, but still able to keep a groove. Let me show you what I mean. Now, where did I put my tracks? Having found my tracks, managed to screw up one recording when I came to edit everything together. I'm back again, and let me show you exactly where I'm going with this. Okay, so I have got a very simple 2-chord sequence in order to show how this works. This is playing on synth 2, and you can see this is the first chord and it's A minor. This is A here, so it's rooted in A, and then I've also got E and C. And this is the C chord, which is the second chord. That's the root note there, C, and then I've got E and G. Now, to write the bass line, I need to emphasise the root notes. So, synth 1, that's what I'm going to use for my bass. And the first chord is going to be in A, but I want it bassy, so I'm going to drop it a pitch. Bit more of a solid noise. So here we go. That's A there, first beat of the bar. It's a bit short, so I'm going to open up the gate to emphasise it a bit more. And now I want to have the second bar open with the root note. And that, if we go back to synth 2 and have a quick look, is going to be C. So synth 1, so we've got A and C, and I'm going to go back to gate and open up the C a bit longer. Now, to create a kind of a groove and a bit more interest in what's going on, I'm going to use a couple of other notes from the chords. So let's have a look at the first chord again. Go back onto synth 2, and we can see this is our rooted A chord, and we could use C, but we've just come from a C, so I think we are going to use E to emphasise what's going on. So back to synth 1. And on the first loop round, let me pick somewhere that I can have this. And I'm going to pick the E there. But I'm going to go up an octave with it. So it's got a nice little jump there. And then let's have a look at the next chord. Well, I've already used the E, so let's not use that again. Let's go for the G. Back to synth 1. And let's use the G. And we shall put that in here. And those are going to be the most important notes, but I need to fill in some extras just to keep things rolling along. But in order to emphasise the root note of this tiny chord sequence, I am going to use the root note to add those extra notes in. So let's go. These all need to be A. Drop it down the octave because that's where we were before. There we go. Nice little groove going on there. That first bar. Let's do the second bar, which is going to be our C, remember. There we go. Now, the next stage of this operation, we've got this sparse open groove going on, is to create some probabilities so that notes drop out at certain times. Now I'm going to stop the pattern and I'll show you the probabilities section. So if you go down to the bottom where it says pattern settings and probabilities, you press it once, you go into pattern settings, you press it again, you go into probabilities. Now you can see here, because it's light blue, that we're on the first beat of the bar. We know that that is the note that we emphasize, and we can listen. That's the root note. That is the second note of the chord that we used, giving it a little bit of a groove. These I'm going to leave at 100%. I want them to sound every time. But these other ones, we can change the probability of. So I might drop that down to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, 30%, 80% and 60%. Then I'm going to swap up to the next bar, and I'm going to leave my root note. Now if we remember, that was the one that we're going to emphasize, so I can drop the probability on these other four notes. So drop that down there, down there, down to here. Quite a low probability on that one. Now if we listen back, you can hear that it doesn't sound every time. We've still kind of got that groove going on, but there's variation every rotation round. It gets a bit more interesting. Say you had a break, you wanted everything to break down and cut down a little bit more. We can do that using the same principle. So if I go into patterns and I duplicate this to here, okay, and go back onto this pattern, back into synth, it's exactly the same, but I'm going to change the probabilities. Remember, we want to emphasize the 1, so we leave that at 100%. This is the change. We want that. We want it to sound more often than anything else, but we don't necessarily want it to sound every time, so I'm going to put it to 70%. Everything else I'm going to drop down to the 10%, and then I'm going to do the same on the other. So root note stays at 100%. Our chord change, extra note, we drop the probability on that, and then I go and drop everything else down to 10%. And now you can hear how empty this is. And there you have it. More interesting bass lines, a little bit more human, sounds a bit more like the lazy bass playing that I do. Odd gaps, odd spaces. If you've made it through to the end, that's really appreciated. If you're not a subscriber, please make sure you subscribe. You obviously like my half-assed tutorials, and there will be more of them coming. Please hit like, it really helps the channel grow, and I'd love to see more people here. If you think somebody else might find this useful, please pass it on. This technique, you can do this with model samples as well, using the probability. So it's not restricted to just the tracks. Remember what they say at the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation? Share and enjoy. See you later, kids. Bye.